Okay, welcome back to the Regal Gentleman YouTube channel. My name is Tariq and today I'm here with Mukeni and I'm about to give him a haircut. So, what are we doing for you today then?
Today, can I have a one on top into a skin fade, please?
Yeah? Do you prefer the one with the grain or against the grain? So do you like the one kind of revealing the skin, so quite short? Or do you like it so you have a bit of weight and darkness and maybe a slight wave at the top?
Slight wave at the top.
Slight wave, okay. So the difference is, for the viewers at home, is that if you go against the grain with the number one, it's quite a lot shorter, so you remove the weight and the length, so it will go quite low down and reveal the skin. Still look very nice with the fade, but by coming with the grain, we leave the weight, so you keep the hair quite dark with a bit of depth, and also gives the hair a nice wave. So we can just give it a bit of a stronger look and a bit more contrast from the skin fade on the sides. With your fade, you usually have it down to a 0, obviously, yeah? Yeah? Do you have the fade quite high or low? Or
quite high, yeah.
Quite high, so say from just above the temple area, say, yeah? Well, there. With the front, do you have the front lined up as well?
Yeah.
Yeah? But you tend to keep it quite natural here where we have the fade quite high as well, yeah? Okay, no problem. So I'm just going to comb all the hair forward, looking for the growth pattern from the crown, because obviously we're moving with the grain. And like I said, by going with or against the grain can give you two different effects. It's even more important to check out the hair growth from the crown area, because if we accidentally go against the grain or against the hair growth from the crown, then we're going to make the hair a lot shorter and it'll look like there's a patch in the hair. So it's very important that we look at the hair growth before we go in with the clippers and see which way the hair grows, and then we follow that growth pattern with the clippers. Okay, so I'm going to start off with my 1 guard open to a 1.5. I've never cut Mukeni's hair before, so he wants a 1 going forward, so I'm just going to go in with a 1.5 first, just to safeguard, just to see how his hair takes to it. Again, around the cut crown area where it's a bit more sensitive, to be careful. So I'm just starting with a 1/2 guard higher than our desired look. Just coming in and moving forward with the grain. Again, just moving from the crown and then following the hair, the pattern of growth all the way around the head. Also be mindful that there's no cow's licks or any irregularities in the growth pattern at the front as well, because then we could have the same problem at the front as the back. If there was a cow's lick and the hair was going backwards and we come against the grain, it would also leave a patch at the front of the hairline also. And also over the softer parts of the recession area, I'm giving it less pressure. So where the hair is quite thick and coarse through the middle, I'm being quite firm and holding the clippers down, strongly. And then as it comes to the recession areas, just not so much, because you want to leave a little bit more length to give us balance when it comes to shaping up the front. So just following it all the way around. So again, we're just going in with the 1.5 first, on my 1 guard with the lever all the way open. Just as I'm going through his hair, I'm just assessing how the hair looks, how it takes, how it cuts, the way it grows, which is very important with this type of cut, because it is quite a drastic difference from a 1 forward and a 1 back. It's almost like a totally different haircut. I don't know whether if you ever had that done either, if you've asked for a 1 and they've just gone back with the number 1, and it's like a different cut altogether. So it's something that maybe some barbers, is not necessarily their fault. It could just be a bit of miscommunication, but just by knowing that and just asking the client, do you prefer, especially with afro hair and hair like yourself, do you prefer it forward or against the grain? It just makes a big difference, because if you say I want a number 1 and essentially give you a number 1, they haven't made a mistake. It's just the lack of communication have just led to a mistake being made, Now I'm just going to drop down, close my lever and go down to a number 1. So we're removing some length here, but keeping the weight, so his hair stays nice and dark. It's not revealing too much skin. Just gives it a real nice effect. Same again, just following the growth pattern from the crown all the way around. Remember not to apply too much pressure when it comes to the recession areas. Just working it down onto the sides, just to help us out when it comes to doing our fade. So I'm going to go in with my 0 guideline. So that's my clipper all the way closed. And now we've discussed that we want to make the fade quite high. You know, not too high and tight, but you know, on the higher side of things. So we're going to go in just kind of above the temple area. And we want to keep this kind of part a lot softer and make the front nice and sharp and with a nice crisp line. So first of all, I'm going to go in with my clipper and make a 0 line. Working nice and firm and then kind of flicking out at the top so we don't make too much of a hard line. Also just leaving this hair here underneath just to remove then later on with my trimmer or detailer. I always do this rather than going in with my trimmer or detailer. Instead of making hard lines, I tend to make it softer with my 0 clipper first of all and then remove with my detailer afterwards. So dipping it towards the back. Okay, now we move on to the other side. I'm using my mirror as my guideline, so I turn the chair facing the mirror on the line I've already created and I use the mirror to see where I've already cut. And then softer towards our guideline, so just flicking out ever so slightly at the top. Now we're going to join it up at the back. Now moving down to my trimmers or detailers, just to remove this hair here now, this excess hair, just to get it right down to the skin. But again, by putting in the clipper first and then doing this afterwards, we stop ourselves from making any hard lines with these detailers or trimmers, which sometimes can be a pain to get rid of. Nice and firm, and then as I get closer and closer to that 0 line, then I'm being conscious and just moving away from the head. As I'm coming lower to the neck area, just stretching the neck out slightly, just so we don't nick the client's neck where the skin's soft. So now I'm going to move on to my number 1. So I'm going to make a guideline with a number 1 and then work down, back down to the 0 line from a 0.5 guard down to my open guard just to knock out the 0 line. Then I'm going to blend the rest into the top. So by going in with this number 1 now, I think you will see the difference of a 1 with the grain and a 1 against the grain. So we'll go in against the grain now with our number 1. So I think you can quite clearly see this is a 1 with the grain, that's a 1 against the grain, and it's quite a severe difference. So That's the different look you get from working with the grain and working against the grain. Okay, now I'm going to go down to my 0.5 guard, 0.5 guard, and work over the line, over the zero line that we created earlier, but keeping it underneath our number 1 guideline. Before then we knock out the 1 guideline up into the top of the head. So we've done a 1 coming down. I'm going to use my 1.5 guard and then my number 1 guard open to remove that line. And now to work down to remove this line, my 0.5 guard and then my open blade. So again, just working now over the zero line, quite firm over the line, and then coming off the head as I get closer to my number 1 guide. So my open blade now, so just going to open that up. Just about, that's all the way open, that's closed, so just about halfway. Just really focusing over the line, working slightly above it before we work down to our actual 0. And just completely knock that line out. You know, afro hair grows in all different directions, so I'm coming in different directions also, you know, with the trimmers, using the corner of my blades just for certain parts. I mean, if there's only a certain part you want to cut, don't use the whole clip because you might take away from somewhere else that you don't need to, so you just go in with the corners just to remove little blemishes, as I'd call them, just little bits of hair that are a bit more stubborn than others. Just working over it, different directions. Then I'm going to drop it down to my 0, so close my clipper, and then really just focus over the line that we created earlier on. Again, just using the corners, working through the grades, opening and closing my guard as I move along. So we just have to focus on blending the number 1 now up into our 1 coming down on the top. Okay, so to start my graduation, I'm going to use my 1.5 guard. That I think will match up with my 1 coming down on the top with the grain. So working over that number 1, following around the head slightly, coming off. We don't want to go into anything that we've previously cut because we want to keep it nice and dark on the top and then gradually fade down to our 0. So just working over that number 1. And as you can see, the 1.5 guard matches in with the top quite nicely. Now dropping down to my number 1 guard, the lever open. Again, just working over that number 1 guideline. Being careful to now move lower than our 1.5 guard. I'm not going over what we previously have cut. And as you can see, the line is just getting softer and softer. And the fade getting more gradual. Just closing my lever so slightly. Just really focusing over that number 1 guideline that we made earlier. And that's pretty much blended all the way in now, from the top down to a 0 on the sides. And now we're going to repeat the same method on the opposite side. So again, back to my 0.5 guard. And then we're going to do the same again. Working down underneath our number 1 guideline, back down to our 0 line. Knocking our 0 line out, and then focusing on getting rid of the 1 guide. Now down to my open blade, halfway open. And down to my 0, just Making sure that the line is completely gone. Now, as we did on the other side, moving down to my 1.5 guard, working over the 1 guideline, and then around and off the head. Making sure I'm combing the hair back down to where I want to cut the hair. Now moving down to my number 1 guard, just opening that up all the way, and really just focusing lower over the number 1 line that we've made. Again, combing the hair down, making sure we're collecting the hair as we're moving up. In between a 1.5 and my 1. Using the corners of the blades. Here the head slightly dips in, so the hair gets slightly more awkward to cut. So it's a perfect example of when you would just use the corners of your blades just to get in those little pockets and remove the little weight patches. You can see we faded in both these sides now. Now we're just going to concentrate on the back, and then we're going to work on the shape up at the front. Okay, so back to my 0.5 guard, and then just following it around from side A to side B via the back of the head. The same again, just working closer, working backwards closer to that 0 line, slowly just knocking it out. Down to my 0, just over the line. And same with the sides, now to my 1.5 guard. Working over that number 1 guideline. You don't want to go too high, remove too much weight, reveal too much skin, and then take away the graduation of the fade. You want to leave a nice contrast coming from the top down to the 0 on the sides. Now down to my 1 guard, just going to open that up. As I'm getting closer to the number 1 guideline, I'm just closing my clip ever so slightly until we rub out the 1 guideline all together. Just taking an extra, a couple of minutes just to go over and just fine tune, pick out little parts. How's that looking for you so far?
Wow.
Yeah, good.
I really like it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it looks really nice, the contrast from the 1 down to the 0. And obviously that makes a big difference from having the 1 going forward and the 1 coming back.
I've never been asked before about the
forward or back, yeah.
No, he's just like,
just do whatever.
okay.
Hit and miss. Sometimes it's forward, sometimes it's back kind of thing, yeah?
Yeah.
Just gonna comb all the hair forward now, the front. Gonna give it a little spray with some hairspray and just comb it all down so it holds. So when we go in with our trimmer to make it nice and sharp, the hair is all forward and it's going to be as sharp as possible. Okay, so we're going to start in the middle here at the widow's peak. Just make a nice kind of guideline here. Then I'm going to work my way around here and then come on the opposite side and work there also. So just moving along, trying to keep the trimmer straight as possible to give us a straight line. Trying not to go back into the hairline too much. Obviously on the sides we want to give it some strength, some depth, so we want to just edge it back ever so slightly just to give it a sharp finish. of the recession area, just giving it some, as you can see the hairline just gets stronger as I move along with the clipper, with the trimmer should I say. And then just work down. Look at the hair from different angles, just to make sure everything's lined up nice and neat and even. I'm just going to razor just the edges for you, just to make it nice and sharp and crisp just before we finish. So it just gives it, gives it a bit of a harder outline and also gives you a couple of days more regrowth as well.
Oh yeah, the difference it makes with the on the top.
Yeah.
Because I think usually it cut it back.
Yeah. Just as a client, it would always help the barber to say, I like the number one going with the grain, so coming forward rather than going back. So that could save yourself a lot of problems. So just going to follow now where my trimmer's been with my razor, just sharpen up those lines, keeping the skin nice and firm, my thumb, just working down with that razor. Tilt the head backwards as well and come up against the grain on the shape up, just to get as short as possible. I do some freehand scissor work and just balance my scissors on the head and just move across it, just getting rid of them flyaway hairs, just controlling it, just making sure it's all neat all the way across. So just coming in, and this just softens up the fade slightly. Going to give it a little spray with some mist, some sheen, just to give it some moisture and shine. Also conditions the hair as well. Just work that in with my hands. Now, how's that for you?
I really like it, thank you.
Yeah?
Yeah. Just like the detail and the angles and the fade.
Yeah,
I really like
it makes a difference, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The length on the top and the graduation as well. So it's a good thing you know what to ask for as well when you have your hair cut now, you know what I mean? Yeah. So like I said, because when your hair was grown, it kind of made your hairline look slightly weak as well at the front, if you don't mind me saying. So by having that sharp line at the front now, it just gives you that strength.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It looks really strong from the front. So just little things like that, and also having the weight left on the top with the graduation on the sides and leaving it slightly softer, just makes your hair and your hairline now look really strong and gives it a great look. So yeah, I'm glad you like it.
Thank you.